Where are we going to see initial coin offerings evolve and develop over the next few years? Well, to date we've seen many initial coin offerings used as a mechanism to raise cash to help finance businesses and enable them to grow what they're actually doing and evolve their technology. We've touched on the fact that we're likely to see many global brands offering cryptocurrencies as a digital loyalty scheme, as a way to keep your attention, as a way to encourage you to do more business with them. So unlikely that you'll see, if you like, the Nike coin necessarily using the money to raise cash. Highly unlikely we'll see the Apple coin, because they're already sitting on a mountain of cash to actually raise more money. But what they are very likely to do is to actually have the Nike coin or the Apple coin or the Face coin or the Google coin or the Amazon coin as a way to encourage you to actually stay and keep their attention. And then moving on to central governments, and this is where I find it's all a little bit ironic, because Bitcoin was originally designed in order for you to have anonymity, i.e. you could trade and deal with people and they didn't know who you were. And that's why it was initially very popular. And unfortunately, many people think that, Bitcoin, it's all about sort of, drug barons and assassins and where to buy, your next Kalashnikov rifle. But some studies being carried out have proved that actually less than 1% of any activity involving cryptocurrency is actually anything to do with nefarious sort of, ill-gotten gained activity. And because you actually have an immutable eye, a record of the transaction, governments are now beginning to wake up and realize that actually a digital currency has many advantages. It can make the processing of documentation, the tracking of payments, actually very efficient. It can cut down fraud. By having a digital currency, you're effectively destroying the black market because everything's open and available. So we're now seeing more and more central governments, and it's interesting hearing Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of England, talk recently, saying he was having conversations with many central banks about digital currencies and was actually looking at bringing out the Bank of England coin, believe it or not. And then a few weeks later came out and said, we are no longer looking at Bank of England coin, because if we issued the Bank of England coin, I am seriously worried, were his words, that it would cause a run on high street banks. People would cash in their money from Barclays, Lloyds, HSBC, etc. and buy the Bank of England coin, because rather than being backed by a bank where you have protection, albeit limited, you're now backed by the Bank of England, which in theory would be unlimited protection because you're backed by the British government. But you've seen a coin, a cryptocurrency, whereby it was going to be used for activities where you didn't want to know who you're dealing with, so it was kept discreet and anonymous. And now you're seeing governments realizing that actually they can track and they can keep an eye and they can collect taxes far easier potentially. So I think we're going to see many countries looking at bringing out their own digital coin. But what's happening in the marketplace? What's actually going on? Well, it's interesting if you look at something like Sweden, where now they're saying over 80% of all transactions are cashless. And simply look at yourself. How often do you go to the cash point machine? How often do you go to an ATM? You're probably using your contactless credit debit card. You're probably buying things over the web far more than you've ever done. And so actually holding cash is quite expensive for retailers and merchants. They would much rather that they actually were taking credit cards. I know they have to pay the fees, but actually they don't have to then take money and process it and have a stock in their tills, which, imagine something like Macy's. Imagine the millions of dollars that they've got in a till at any one stage, whereas if it's actually in a digital format, as soon as they actually receive the money, it's in their account. And then that means that they can then give the money straight to their suppliers. So instead of 30, 60 days notice, they can say, if you give us an extra 5, 10% discount, we can pay you like that. So there's some real advantage that digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, can effectively offer going forward. And as we see the technology proven out and people realize that they can actually trust it and it is secure, I think we're likely to see central governments, federal states, local authorities, public companies, all joining the private companies on the whole, which are at the moment involved in cryptocurrencies and making this new technology transform our day-to-day activities in a way that we haven't seen a new asset class like this. And when I talk about asset classes, I'm talking about shares, bonds, commodities, properties, maybe art and collectibles like cars, things like this. And now what we have, this other thing which has come out, which is a cryptocurrency, which has attributes of some of those, but it's in the digital environment. So it's giving you the way to digitally engage with your customers, creating records, creating information, therefore creating transparency, reducing fraud and corruption, which, even sophisticated Western markets is still a huge, huge problem of people just not paying their taxes. So cryptocurrencies offer the ability over time to evolve to make it a much more transparent market, a much more efficient way of collecting tax and information for people.